We are now officially in the month of November. The 2024 election is just 4 days away. And in this video, I'll be sharing with you guys my final Senate map prediction. We've been covering these races for over 2 years now, and this is going to be the last time you hear me talk about them. Now, right off the bat, Republicans are in a very good place to win back the Senate majority, despite being in the minority over the past 4 years. The 538 forecast gives them a 90% chance of winning, while a poll market has the GOP at an 82% chance of winning control. And so we're going to cover every single race on this map, starting off in the Midwest, where a lot of key elections will be held. We'll start off in Minnesota. The state is going to be pretty competitive on the presidential level, but in the Senate race, Amy Klobuchar is on track to win her re-election. She leads by 13 points in the polls. It is not going to be that competitive. Klobuchar won her re-election in 2018 by 24 points. This time, the election is going to be closer. Minnesota is going to be likely blue. Wisconsin, though, is going to be significantly more competitive. Incumbent Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin is running for a third term. She's being challenged by Republican nominee Eric Hovde. Now, this race has actually gotten incredibly competitive over the past few weeks, to the point where Baldwin leads by less than 1% in the polling average. I mean, just look at where she was back in August. She led by nearly 7 points. This was going to be an easy victory for Baldwin, but over the last month or so, this race has gotten incredibly tight, with Eric Hovde surging in the polls. However, it is still more likely than not that Baldwin is going to win her re-election. When it comes to these Senate races, incumbency matters a lot more than it does in the presidential election. I mean, just look at 2022. Not a single incumbent senator lost their re-election. The only flip on the map was Pennsylvania, where the incumbent Republican wasn't running. And so Wisconsin is going to be lean blue. I have Tammy Baldwin winning by just over a 2% margin. Moving on now to Michigan, we have another race that's gotten very tight here over the last few weeks. As the election has neared, Republicans are only looking better and better, especially in the competitive races. This time, we do not have an incumbent, as Debbie Stabenow, who was re-elected by 7 points in 2018, is no longer seeking re-election. Instead, we have Alyssa Slotkin, a current member of the House of Representatives, as the Democratic nominee. She's running against Mike Rogers, a former member of the House. And so this is an incredibly close race, especially because we don't have an incumbent. Alyssa Slotkin leads by 3.1% in the polls. It is going to be close, but I do have Slotkin slightly outperforming Baldwin. Michigan generally is just more liberal than its western neighbor. This race, though, has gotten a lot closer, with Slotkin leading by nearly 6 points at many points early on. And so Michigan is also going to be lean blue, with Slotkin on track to win by around 3 to 4 points. Down in Indiana, we have a solid red race for Republicans. Even though the incumbent Mike Braun isn't running for re-election, Jim Banks, the new Republican nominee, he is easily going to win his first 6-year term in the Hoosier state. Next up, in the Buckeye state of Ohio, we have what is probably the most competitive race in the country, where Sherrod Brown is running for re-election to a 4th term. I mean, this is a huge incumbency advantage. Bernie Moreno, though, has been giving Brown a run for his money. In the polls, Brown leads by just 1%. This is definitely not enough for people to be convinced that he is actually going to win. This is a very small margin, well within the margin of error, and according to Polymarket right now, Bernie Moreno has a 60% chance of winning, and no, it was not always like this. In fact, Democrats were ahead basically until the beginning of last month. And if you look at Brown's 2018 performance, yes, he was able to survive his re-election bid. He won by just under 7 points, but this was a blue wave year when Republicans couldn't even win seats in Montana or West Virginia. Ohio was another easy pickup for Republicans that they somehow fumbled. But this is a presidential year now. Donald Trump is on the ballot. He's going to win Ohio by a double-digit margin. It is highly unlikely that Sherrod Brown is going to hold on to his seat, and so the Buckeye State is going to be tilt red, with Bernie Moreno barely edging out a victory. Before we continue, nearly 70% of you guys are not subscribed, so please subscribe right now to help us reach 300,000 subscribers before the election. Also, join my Discord server to participate in our 2024 prediction contest at discord.gg/elections. And so Republicans just made their first flip, and they're about to make a second in the state of West Virginia. Incumbent Democrat Joe Manchin has chosen not to run for re-election, realizing that he had absolutely no chance. He won by 3 points back in 2018 against Patrick Morrisey, a weak Republican candidate, but he was never going to survive his re-election challenger this time around, which is, of course, Jim Justice, the very popular Republican governor. Justice was going to win, even if Manchin had stayed in the race. He leads by 34 points in the only survey conducted. Nobody even knows who the Democratic candidate is. And so West Virginia is going to be solid red, but it's going to be the second flip on the map for the GOP. We're now going to move up to Pennsylvania, where just like in Wisconsin and Michigan, this race has also tightened up significantly. All three of these states were likely blue before Donald Trump began surging in the presidential election, which obviously made these down ballot races more competitive as well. However, Bob Casey is in a relatively better position. He's running for a fourth term and was actually reelected by 13 points in 2018, outperforming both Debbie Stabenow and Tammy Baldwin. Looking at the polling today, Casey leads by 2.6%. He is still ahead in basically every single poll, but you can see just how much closer this race has gotten. Casey led by nearly double digits just less than 2 months ago. I mean, at the beginning of the year, he was ahead by 8, and he held on to this lead basically until we entered September, and then in October, things got even worse. And so Bob Casey is probably going to win, but David McCormick is going to give him a run for his money. McCormick was the right choice by Republicans. He should have been chosen in 2022 when Mehmet Oz lost to John Fetterman, who wasn't even a functioning human being. If David McCormick was the nominee 2 years ago, he would have been a sitting senator. However, running against Bob Casey, who is a much better candidate than Fetterman, it is going to be a lot more difficult for Republicans here. So Pennsylvania is also going to be lean blue, with the incumbent Democrat Bob Casey on track to win by around 3 to 4 points. Shifting our focus up to the Northeast now, this region is going to be dominated by Democrats. Kirsten Gillibrand is going to win her re-election in New York, Bernie Sanders in Vermont, Angus King in Maine, Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, Chris Murphy in Connecticut. We also have Sheldon Whitehouse in Rhode Island, and then Tom Carper in Delaware. New Jersey, though, is going to be a little bit more interesting. Senator Bob Menendez, who resigned in August, he was convicted multiple times for bribery, and so that's what caused him to finally leave the U.S. Senate. He was going to lose his re-election if he ran, and he really did hinder Democrats in the state. Andy Kim, a current member of the House, is the new Democratic nominee. It seems like he has recovered from where he was back earlier this year, and so New Jersey is probably going to be solid blue, although this is definitely a race that looked like it was going to be a lot closer than it should have been. Maryland, however, is not going to be solid blue. Larry Hogan is on track for a strong finish, even if he loses. I mean, Maryland is a state where Democrats win by 35 points. The incumbent Democrat Ben Cardin is no longer running for re-election, and so we have Angela Ulster-Brooks as the Democratic nominee. If you look at the polling, Ulster-Brooks leads by just 11 points. This is going to be a close race. Now, Larry Hogan is the very popular former governor of Maryland, and the only reason why he's losing is because this is a very nationalized race. This race might decide the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, and so even if a lot of Democrat voters like Larry Hogan, they still don't want to risk giving the majority to Republicans, and so that is why Ulster-Brooks has a slight lead here. The state is going to be likely blue. It's going to be a lot more competitive than it generally is. Before I continue, I want to tell you guys about Polymarket, the world's largest prediction market, where you can track election results and instantly see who's leading. These odds react in real time to current events instead of days later like the polls. There's no bias or media spin, just pure data. Market odds reflect the collective analysis, beliefs, and wisdom of thousands of traders reacting to world events. Polymarket has also recently launched a mobile app where you can access their 2024 election forecast on the go. It's what I use every day to stay updated on the presidential race. Download it for free right now using the QR code on screen or the link in the description below. Virginia is also going to be likely blue, where incumbent Senator Tim Kaine is going to defeat Hung Cao by just over a double-digit margin. In case you forgot, Tim Kaine is actually Hillary Clinton's running mate from the 2016 race. Of course, he was unsuccessful, but he's chosen to remain in the Senate, where he's probably going to win by around 12 points. I don't see the polling average being too far off. Virginia is going to be likely Democrat. We're now going to come down to the South, where we have 4 races. We'll begin up in Missouri, where Josh Hawley is going to win his re-election by just over 10 points. Now, Trump is going to win Missouri by a solid margin, but Josh Hawley isn't nearly as popular. But Missouri is red enough of state that there's no doubt he's going to come out on top. So Missouri is going to be likely Republican, while Tennessee and Mississippi are going to be safe. Down in Florida, we have Rick Scott running for re-election. There's no doubt he is going to win. He probably isn't going to outperform Trump, but he's definitely not losing a seat, especially after what happened in 2018. Bill Nelson, the incumbent Democrat running for a 4th term, was on the ballot. Everybody thought he was going to win, but Rick Scott somehow came out of nowhere and defeated him, winning by 0.12%. After that, there's no way he is going to lose this time. Scott leads by nearly 5 points in the polls. Trump's leading by around 7. Trump can probably break that double-digit barrier. Rick Scott probably won't, but he's definitely still going to win his re-election. He's been eyeing a lot of top positions in Republican Senate leadership. If he wants that, of course, he'll have to win his race, but that definitely is going to happen. Florida is going to be lean red. I have Scott winning by around 5 to 7 points. We're now going to move out west. We have quite a few competitive states here. We even have some more flips on the line for Republicans, but we're going to get Washington and California out of the way first. Maria Cantwell is going to win in Washington. Meanwhile, we have Adam Schiff in California. For Republicans, the Nebraska special election is solid red, as well as North Dakota, Wyoming, and Utah. We'll start up top in Montana, where Jon Tester, the incumbent Democrat, is seeking re-election to a 4th term. It is very likely he loses. Besides the seat currently held by Joe Manchin, where he's not even running for re-election, Montana is the state with the most vulnerable incumbent by far. Trump is going to win Montana by 15 to 20 points. Jon Tester basically has no chance. Now, he's obviously going to perform a lot better than Kamala Harris, but Tim Sheehy is on track to win his first 6-year term. Sheehy leads by nearly 7 points in the polls. I don't see him breaking a 7-point margin. This is still going to be a close race, as we do have a longtime incumbent senator running for re-election, but there's no doubt that Republicans are going to come out on top. Tester narrowly won by 3.6% in 2018. This was, again, a blue wave year, a very good showing for Democrats. They were able to hold on to their seats in not just Montana, but again, also, of course, Ohio and West Virginia. 2024, though, all 3 of these seats are going to be transferred over to the GOP. Montana is going to be lean red, with Sheehy winning by around 5 to 7 points. Next up, in Nevada, we actually have a close race here as well, not because we have an incumbent Democrat, but because we have a weak incumbent Republican. Deb Fischer simply isn't the greatest candidate. She's not that popular in Nebraska. That has been made clear based on how she's polling right now against independent candidate Dan Osborne. Osborne does lean slightly to the left of Fischer, but he is not a Democrat by any means. He is running a good campaign. He is definitely getting a lot of voters excited, but ultimately, Fischer is still probably going to win. She leads by around 4 to 5 points in the polls. This is going to be a very close race, though. Deb Fischer is not going to perform well, but with Trump at the top of the ticket, he's probably going to be able to help out Fischer enough to make sure that she wins her seat for another 6 years. I have Nebraska's regular election as lean Republican, with Fischer winning by around 3 to 5. Coming back down now to the Sun Belt once again, we'll start off in Nevada, where the Silver State is going to be very close in the presidential race. It's basically a pure toss-up. Kamala Harris might be the first Democrat to lose it in 20 years. However, in the Senate election, Jackie Rosen is performing much better against Republican nominee Sam Brown. Rosen is seeking a second term and leads by 4.2% in the polls. polls. Now, it might look like she's up by quite a bit, but this race is a lot more competitive than it was a few months ago. At the end of August, early September, Rosen led by as much as 11 points. She was on track for a landslide victory, basically, but that simply is not going to happen anymore. Rosen's going to win by around 4 to 5, maybe down to 3, but it's definitely going to be a Democratic victory. Nevada is going to be lean blue. Arizona is also going to be lean Democrat. Carrie Lake is not going to win. That simply isn't going to happen. Lake is not that strong of a nominee. She lost to Katie Hobbs for the governorship in 2022, and Katie Hobbs wasn't even a good Democratic nominee. It was a mistake choosing Carrie Lake. Ruben Gallego is going to be elected here. He leads by 3.9% in the polls. Lake does lead in the most recent poll, but it's really not going to be enough. It's too late. Carrie Lake is not popular in Arizona, especially among independents. Now, Gallego is doing a lot worse than he was a few months ago. This race is also tightening, but I simply don't see a path to victory for the Republicans here. Arizona is going to be lean blue. I mean, Republicans can definitely win seats here. They just need to put up better candidates. Martha McSally and Carrie Lake have not been it. Next up, in New Mexico, Democrat Martin Heinrich is going to win his re-election to a third term. It's probably going to be by around a 10-point margin. Very unlikely that he'll win by more than 15, so New Mexico is going to be likely blue. And then finally, in Texas, Ted Cruz is running for re-election. He's ahead by 4.1% in the polls against Colin Allred. Now, Ted Cruz is simply not a popular senator. He's pretty unpopular even among his colleagues in the Senate, but as well in Texas. I mean, the whole Cancun thing, a lot of people still remember that. And so Ted Cruz is going to struggle once again, just like he did back in 2018 when he nearly lost to Beto O'Rourke. But he's still going to pull off a narrow margin of victory. I think 4 points is going to be pretty accurate. He might get up to 6, but it's definitely not going to be a comfortable margin. Ted Cruz has been going on TV saying he's losing and that he needs money. That's probably not too far from the truth, but ultimately, he is still going to win. Texas is going to be lean Republican. And then finally, in Hawaii, of course, Mazie Hirono is going to win her re-election. And so this is my final 2024 Senate map prediction. After analyzing these races for the better part of 4 years, we have Republicans at 52 seats. They're going to flip Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia while holding on to their seats in Nebraska, Texas, and Florida. Democrats, for their part, they're going to safely defend Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. It is going to be a very good night for Republicans in terms of the Senate races. This is an incredibly favorable map. It is extremely unlikely that Democrats actually hold on to their Senate majority. And so if Trump can win the presidency, if Republicans can also do well in the House races, there's a very good chance that Republicans will win a trifecta once again, just like they did back in 2016. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election on November 5th. And join my Discord server to participate in our 2024 prediction contest at discord.gg/elections.